The Fishin' Magazine television series is brought to you by Ranger Boats. Still building them one at a time so you can fish hard, run strong, and rest easy. Bass Pro Shops. Quantum and Motor Guide, the choice of serious fishermen. L&L Marine Care products. Take the chore out of marine maintenance. Fishing hotspots. Maps so good, people ask for them by name. Pinpoint Network Fishing Systems. Daylight Corporation. The Fishing Hole in St. Louis, Missouri, and Central Pro-Am Association, the leader in Pro-Am bass tournaments.
Welcome to the Fishin' Magazine television series. We're on Grand Lake for the Central Pro-Am Ranger Boats $135,000 anniversary Pro-Am bass tournament. It's 100 degrees in the shade, if you can find any shade. So get your sunglasses, get yourself some sunscreen, and join us right after these messages.
Said it couldn't be done. They said no tournament circuit could be successful running only Pro-Am format tournaments. That was 10 years ago when Central Pro-Am Association launched its first full tournament season in 1989. Now, a decade later, Central Pro-Am has emerged as the leader in Pro-Am bass tournaments and one of America's premier tournament circuits. To celebrate those 10 years of success, Central Pro-Am is holding a special event like no other the organization has ever held before. It's the Central Pro-Am Ranger Boats Anniversary Pro-Am, and it carries the biggest payback in Central Pro-Am history, over $130,000. The Pro Division winner will take home a 1999 Ranger 461 VS with Mercury XR6 and $10,000 in cash. And the Amateur Division winner will receive a 24-foot Tracker RV recreational vehicle valued at over $15,000. The 75 pros and 75 amateurs who've entered are among the finest bass anglers in America. And they've anteed up the highest entry fees in Central Pro-Am history, $1,200 for Pro Division competitors and $400 for Amateur Division anglers. And the site for this late July tournament? Where else? Oklahoma's Grand Lake of the Cherokees, perhaps the best midsummer lake in America. Unlike most Central Pro-Am tournaments, this is a 3-day event, and that means competitors must have enough spots, or one really good one, to produce limits 3 days in a row. With temperatures predicted to be near 100 every day and water temperatures in the high 80s, this tournament is certain to test the ability and the endurance of the Pro-Am anglers. On the first day, the fishing lived up to expectations. More than half of the Pro Division competitors weighed in limits as they adjusted successfully to changes that had taken place since the Grand Pro-Am 2 weeks earlier. In that time, the lake level had fallen over 3 feet, so many of the anniversary tournament competitors switched from pitching to flooded willows to traditional midsummer structure patterns on ledges and brush piles. However, some anglers stuck with shallow water flipping patterns, and many of them caught fish. In the Pro Division, Toby Hartzell stole the spotlight early with this 7.3-pound bass and took the tournament lead with a limit weighing 24.3 pounds. And just when everyone had conceded the day one lead to him, in came Lou Treat with a limit even bigger than that, 25.05 pounds, the 6th biggest catch in Central Pro-Am history. And for many of the Amateur Division competitors, it was a memorable day as well. On day 2, the brutal summer heat continued. But for some, the fishing turned cold. Lou Treat returned to the ledge where he caught his monster stringer on day 1. But on the second day, the fish never moved up onto the ledge, and Treat went without a keeper until nearly 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The day also fell apart for Dennis Toon, who was in 3rd place after day 1. On the last day of the Grand Pro-Am and the first day of the Anniversary Pro-Am, Toon came in with a combined total of over 44 pounds, enough to win almost any 2-day tournament. The problem, of course, is that his remarkable catches came in 2 separate tournaments. And on the second day of this tournament, his glorious ride ended, as he could manage only 2 keepers that weighed a total of 3.5 pounds. Fishing got tougher for Toby Hartzell, too, but he managed to overcome his difficulties. Returning to the same small cove in Wolf Creek, where he caught most of his day 1 limit, Hartzell found the going rough. But he won the 1991 Beaver Lake Pro-Am when he was only 19 years old, so he knows what it takes to come through when the chips are down. But on this, his 28th birthday, fortune smiled on him. Although he caught only 4 keepers, they were big enough to weigh nearly 15 pounds and move him into the tournament lead. For Grand Lake guide Gene Piercy, it started out as a day of frustration. Piercy had located a concentration of fish on a small hump outside the entrance to Terra Miranda, and he was working them hard with a Carolina rig. Getting strikes wasn't the problem for Piercy. Early in the day, it was getting them in the boat. Finally, Piercy turned the tide to catch a second straight limit, this one weighing over 16 pounds. And then there's Piercy's amateur partner, Jack Taft III. He enjoyed his best day ever in a Central Pro-Am tournament, coming in with a limit of bass that weighed over 19 pounds. Nearby, 1992 Central Pro-Am champion Mike McClelland was staying up with the leaders, catching bass on a crankbait along an extension of the same hump Piercy was fishing. Other anglers also had memorable days on the water. Former Grand Lake Pro-Am title holder and FLW tournament winner Alan Head had only 4 pounds on day 1, but he came back with a limit weighing 25.75 pounds, the biggest catch of the tournament. While Doug Garrett, winner of back-to-back Megabucks tournaments in 1997 and 98, jumped into contention with his second limit, this one weighing over 18 pounds. Recapping the results of the torrid first 2 days of competition, Toby Hartzell sits atop the Quantum Pro-Am scoreboard with 39.2 pounds. Fellow Oklahoman Wayne Diffie is 2.5 pounds back in second place with 36.8 pounds. But Mike McClelland, Daryl Robertson, and Gene Piercy are all in hot pursuit. In the rest of the top 10, Kelly Power leads the way in 6th place with 34.1 pounds, with Paul Loveland, Dale Wilcox, Jason Christie, and Doug Garrett close behind. In the amateur division, Jerry Weisinger is the front runner with 28 pounds, but it's tight from there on. Darren Compton holds down second place with 26.95 pounds, but he has an edge of mere ounces over Jim Kaywood, Jason Bond, and Jack Taft III. In the rest of the top 10, David Letourneau heads the list in 6th place with 25.25 pounds, followed by Lee Owens, Mike Savage, Larry Dexter, and Matt Carroll. Stay tuned for exciting final day action. We'll be right back. It's now time for Bass Fishing My Way. Helpful hints from some of Central Pro-Am's top competitors. Brought to you by Daylight Donuts, the best donuts around. When it comes to catching Grand Lake bass in the summer, it's hard to beat Alan Head, especially when the bass are holding in submerged brush piles and he can catch them his way.
Most everybody can fish a worm if they'll take their time and concentrate on it. It's real hard for a lot of people when they start fishing in 10 to 12 foot of water to keep contact with the bottom. And if you can't keep contact with the bottom, most of the time you're not going to catch a fish. Now, I'm not saying that a fish won't run out and get a worm no matter how fast you pull it. But whenever you've got a sluggish bite, you especially need to keep in good contact with the bottom. If you feel the chunk rock or the brush and you can jiggle it up and down in it or bump it up against that rock, it always seems to help trigger a strike.
The morning of day 3 looks just about like the 2 previous mornings. It's certain to be hot, and the Pro-Am anglers are prepared to face it. But they also know the name of the game is Catch Toby Hartzell. And they all know that may be easier said than done. Among the anglers nipping at Toby's heels, the one who worries Hartzell most is Daryl Robertson. Most of the tournament competitors, including Hartzell, suffered through down days on day 2, but not Robertson. He's one of the few whose catch improved on the second day, and momentum is working in his favor. For the first 2 days, Robertson has run a series of spots from Horse Creek to Sailboat Bridge and thrown a variety of lures, trying to keep pace with Hartzell and the other leaders. Today, with the money on the line, he's narrowed his focus. He's fishing an offshore ledge and boat docks in Wolf Creek and a series of brush piles in Horse Creek. Robertson has thoroughbred credentials. The capable Oklahoma angler qualified for the Bassmasters Classic in 1996, but he's never managed to perform well in Central Pro-Am events. This morning, he seems to be shaking off what he calls his Pro-Am jinx and doing it in dramatic fashion. Even when a keeper catfish grabs his lure, it doesn't seem to faze Robertson or amateur partner Mike Bennett. They're in the heat of battle, and so far, everything is going their way. Wayne Diffie was in second place after day 2, and he's going about his game plan in workmanlike fashion. Diffie's been fishing in tournaments for more than 20 years, and he knows that keeping your wits about you when the money's on the line is the best asset you can have. Diffie's fishing a series of gravel bars and a swing in the Grand River Channel, where he's located a hump in 15 feet of water near the edge of the Old River Channel, where the water depth drops to 60 feet. He's caught good fish there each day, and it looks as if that trend is going to continue. Before leaving to fish his other early morning spots, Diffie resorts to the lure that produced, in memorable fashion the day before, a 4-pound bass and a 20-pound catfish.
Oh, gosh, dang, look at this. I guarantee, look at this thing take line. And he's through a brush pile. My goodness. Now, that dude just broke 25-pound test line. If that wasn't a catfish, I don't know what it was. You see that thing take a drag? My goodness.
After Toby Hartzell came in with only 4 fish on day 2, people were beginning to wonder if his luck and his fish had run out. How many fish can this one small area produce? By mid-morning, he knows the answer. He already has 4 solid keepers. And although he knows that might be enough to win most tournaments, Hartzell knows he needs a limit to stay in contention. Now, if this fishing real estate looks familiar to you, it should. Hartzell's worked this same area, no larger than a football field, for 3 straight days. He came into the tournament without a solid pattern, but his instincts have served him well. When Grand Lake was higher, there was a good concentration of bass in this small, shallow creek near the back of the Wolf Creek Arm. Hartzell reasoned that with the water retreating, all the bass in the back of the creek would funnel out through the creek channel that runs near several brush piles and this solitary boat dock. And so he spent 3 hot, miserable days in the back of his small pocket, doggedly pursuing his second Central Pro-Am title. At last, Hartzell senses he cannot stick with his tiny spot any longer, but he decides to make one last pass through the area. This time, his persistence pays off. He now has a solid limit, but he's worried that Robertson will come in with over 20 pounds. So he decides that his next move will be to head back down the lake to the spot where he caught his big fish the first day. And now, for a brief break from the brutal July sun, we take you to James Miles, who for 2 days has been fishing what you might call the thinking man's pattern, fishing in the shade of Sailboat Bridge for bass that move into feed among the pilings. Not only has he stayed cooler than the other competitors, he's the only one fishing this pattern. And if the big ones move in, Miles could move up big time if the other leaders start to falter. Meanwhile, back on the hump outside Terra Miranda, Gene Piercy and Mike McClelland are working hard to keep pace with the other leaders. Piercy has fished nowhere else for 3 days, and remarkably, his fish are still holding up. In fact, he's working on his best catch of the tournament. McClelland also has a limit, but unfortunately, his fish have decreased in size, and he's in danger of falling out of contention. Kelly Power was in 6th place after day 2, and he's back on the ledge that produced limits the first 2 days. This bass gives him his 3rd straight limit, and if he can manage to get a couple of big fish, he'll be in position to enjoy possibly the biggest payday of his fishing career. A short time later, Dick Hinman hooks up with a solid bass of his own, and Power is quick to assist him with the net. In a remarkable turn of events, Toby Hartzell is already back at the dock, nearly 2 hours early. On the way back down the lake, his engine failed, and he had to limp in on his trolling motor. With the tournament in the balance, Hartzell's decided to play it safe and take his chances against Robertson and the rest of the field with what he has, rather than risk being late. He weighs in first.
There it is, 18.55 pounds. Let me get a 2-day total here, 3-day total, excuse me. We normally do 2-day events. Let me get a 3-day total here. Can you do the math, Missy?
In the amateur division, Jim Kaywood is also in early.
We've got a leader in the pro division already. We're going to have a leader in the amateur division. How many bass? 5 fish got the limit. Good sack. 16.80 pounds. Going to do the math here. Well, look at the amateur division. 43.25 pounds. That's your leader right now in the amateur division, Jim Kaywood.
When the second flight arrives, Kaywood's lead is challenged by fellow Kansan Darren Compton.
Oh, look at this sacrifice from Mr. Compton here. Look at here. 16.85 pounds. Let's do some math here. This may have got, did this get Kaywood? Boy, do it again. Double check it, triple check it, get a calculator out. 43.80 pounds. A new leader in the amateur division, Darren Compton.
In the pro division, Toby Hartzell's challengers soon arrive. The first is Ronnie Walker, who comes in with nearly 20 pounds. But he was simply too far back and falls short of overtaking Hartzell with 51.9 pounds. Gene Piercy is next. Piercy has another limit, but it's not enough to overcome Hartzell's 5-pound edge after day 2, and he settles into second place with 53.75 pounds. Then it's Wayne Diffie's turn.
He's weighed in 36.80 pounds, averaging over 18 pounds a day of Grand Lake bass. He's from Oakhurst, Oklahoma. Do you have the limit, sir?
Yeah, I do.
He does. If they weigh like they've been weighing, like day 1, he can give him a charge. Oh, this is going to be close. He may get Toby Hartzell right here. He's not going to get him. 19.50 pounds. Here's your 2-day total, 56.30 pounds. That's second place right now in the pro division.
Finally, it's all up to Darrell Robertson.
Former Bassmaster Classic qualifier, 1999 FLW Tour Championship qualifier. He had 35 pounds going into this. He had a 1660, an 1840, and now he's got to get it on up there to catch Toby Hartzell. Have you got him?
Well, I don't know how much he's got.
You're going to need almost a little over 20 pounds.
Well, I've got close to that.
Here we go. Watch out, everybody. Come here, Earnhardt. Come in here. Look in here with me. Ready? 21.40 pounds. 55.90 pounds. Darrell Robertson, third place. $10,000 if it holds up right here.
It's in the record books now. Toby Hartzell holds on to win Central Pro-Am Association's first anniversary Pro-Am with a 3-day total of 57.5 pounds. He's followed closely by 3 other capable Oklahoma anglers, Wayne Diffie, Darrell Robertson, and Gene Piercy, with Ronnie Walker completing the top 5. In the rest of the top 10, Alan Head leads the way in 6th place with 51.1 pounds, followed by Mike McClelland, Kelly Power, Jason Christie, and Gary Carrier. In the amateur division, Darren Compton wins his first Central Pro-Am tournament with 43.8 pounds, edging out runner-up Jim Kaywood by barely half a pound, while a trio of Pro-Am veterans, Matt Carroll, Lee Owens, and Jerry Weisinger, complete the top 5. In the rest of the top 10, Jason Bond and Jack Taft III finish in a tie for 6th place with 34.3 pounds, with David Letourneau, Mike Smith, and Dave Ingroff close behind. Stay tuned for tournament winning tips from Toby Hartzell. We'll be right back.
Don't spend your time on the water haphazardly searching.
It's now time for Tips from the Top, techniques you can use to catch more fish. Brought to you by Ranger Boats, where they still build them one at a time.
Well, this spot here is a spot that I fish all the time. It's most generally always got some fish. It just happened to this weekend, it had some better fish. It's got a small little creek channel. It's about silted in now, but it has got a little channel that goes back and a little channel bluff. And the wind, all 3 days in this tournament, the wind blowed in it about halfway, just enough to push the shad in. I think a lot of the fish pulled out of the willows that's in the back of this little creek out to the brush piles because of the water dropping. And I think they just pulled out there the better fish for sure and got in what docks was there and what brush piles was there. But the deepest water I was fishing in that little creek where I caught the majority of my fish was probably 4 to maybe 5 foot. The bigger fish I caught was in the docks, and I had a couple places up here around Shangri-La and I come back the first day and caught the 730 about 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. The big fish come on the Alron worm. I run out of the worms that I needed. I had to switch to a Berkley power worm, and did catch a few fish on the power worm. This is a 10-inch flipping worm from Alron here. This is what I caught my big fish on. This is the color I went to after, but I caught the big fish on a red shad Alron worm. I did catch my second day fish on this worm right here. I used a 1/4 ounce sinker. A lot of times I use heavier, but the reason I was using a 1/4 ounce sinker with this big a worm, it let it fall so slow. And if there was a fish around the dock suspended, like the big fish was, it'd give it a little bit more time for him to come out and get it. This is a 3/8 ounce Alron jig. It's got the older style skirt, which I like awful well. As you see, the blue is not quite as blue and bright as most jigs has. It just seems like this jig is what I got confidence in. It's confidence bait is what it is. I feel like when I flip it, I'm capable of getting bit anywhere.
You know, Toby Hartzell celebrated his 28th birthday on day 2 of this tournament. He got to open up his biggest present on day 3. Congratulations, Toby, and thanks to each and every one of you for watching. We'll see you next week on the Fishin' Magazine television series.
The Fishin' Magazine television series is brought to you by Ranger Boats. Still building them one at a time so you can fish hard, run strong, and rest easy. Bass Pro Shops. Quantum and Motor Guide, the choice of serious fishermen. L&L